You're watching News at Prime. Thank you very much to Dumisang for that business update. To this now, Justice and Constitutional Development Minister Mmamoloko Kubayi is promising to beef up and strengthen the criminal justice system to deal with the worsening cases of gender-based violence. The minister is promising to basically stem the rising GBV and femicide cases. She joins me now for a conversation on this. Minister, good evening to you, and thank you very much for your time. Can I start with the case that is before courts today, that brought by the families of the Cradock 4, some very uncomfortable allegations against government, and those allegations not only come from the families, but the previous heads of the prosecuting authorities who suggested that there was political interference from them pursuing these cases to finality. How do you, as government, respond to that and promise to, I guess, to do things better moving forward?
Thank you very much, Tony, and good evening to your viewers. And do apologize for background noise. I am at the airport out of the PE High Court. Let me just say that we are worried about those allegations, and that's why the President would have set up the Commission of Inquiry that would determine whether indeed there's been interference and by who and why that has been done. So we're looking at that work being done within the 6 months, and it will give us the answers so that we can ensure that if indeed something like that had happened, we can stop it. But there's been quite strong views from government that nothing like that has happened. And therefore, hence we are happy that the inquest today has started in Gqeberha. For the Cradock 4, and there are many other inquests that are taking place. So as you know, concurrent now, we've got the inquest that is happening in KwaZulu-Natal that relates to Chief Albert Mutuli, and together with Griffith and others, and the COSAS 4 is continuing. So we are working around the clock to ensure that we catch up with the work that should have been done earlier. And there are various reasons why we are sitting where we are. Others, it will be that they would have looked at the incidences, and NPA would have decided that there's no way that we can be able to bring those inquests forth. And we are fortunate with the Cradock 4 that work has done. As we were in court today, tomorrow they'll go to the scenes, reconstruct the scenes, and that's one of the most difficult things. But what we are fortunate as well in the Cradock 4 is that there are some witnesses who are still alive that will be able to give testimony to some of the incidences and what has happened, to give closure to the families.
Is government prepared to pay these families out if it does lose in court?
Look, Tony, it's a very difficult one, I can say that. One, it's on the basis that there are many families that have been affected by apartheid atrocities. There are many communities that have been affected. And the question would be, where do you start and where do you end? Which families do you give? Remember, as part of TRC, there was that money that was set aside, which was 30,000 once off as repatriation. And then those have been paid to the families that we are relating to today. There's been issues where one of the families today, even as I was in court, giving feedback to say they have challenges about the bursaries for their children, which I promised to look at. The department started paying, but at some point stopped. It's part of the beneficiary benefits that are there. There's issues of community murals and community projects that have been identified across that are paid under the TRC and Presidential Fund. So in terms of the report that we received as the department from Parliament then, there's quite a lot of work that has been done. We have seen the reburials. We are concluding this financial year with all the reburials of all the people that were hanged and actually were put in the gallows by the apartheid government. So a lot of work has been done and more has been paid in terms of reparations to the families. Yeah. And the challenge currently with the court, and that's why you would have seen from government, which is the court that is in the High Court, we said that let's allow the Commission of Inquiry to determine those prayers that the families are asking. But another concern that I have, Tony, is that if it is a compensation that is paid, it must be to the families, not to projects, not to, for example, issues such as creation of movies and books, because those can be funded through other mechanisms within government, either ITC, either the Department of Arts and Culture. They do have mechanisms to be able to fund such.
Minister, I'm grateful for your short responses given the time that we have. Quickly on this matter, if ultimately it is found that there was, quote unquote, political interference in pursuing these TRC cases, how big a blemish would that be on the democratic government?
Look, it will be unfortunate if something like that has happened. But as you remember, the Commission of Inquiry is established parallel to a court case in Pretoria High Court. So once the report is finished, we will provide it to court and then allow the court to determine the course of action from that point. And also, we'll look at the recommendation that the Commission is giving us.
All right. Let's talk gender-based violence and femicide. Minister, it's almost as if every other day there is a death, and the more we hear about them, the more gruesome they seem to be taking a turn. Talk to us about what you mean in practical terms when you say you want to strengthen and beef up the criminal justice system. What will that look like?
For us, firstly, Tony, we are working around the clock to amend the Criminal Procedure Act. The Criminal Procedure Act deals with, for example, how the people are arrested and also the bail conditions that are given and the type of condition of bail they are given. We note that previously, when we did the Criminal Procedure Act, the GBV currently situation crisis that we see was not there. So we do think that it warrants for us to be able to respond to that. Like, for example, people are calling for those who have raped children not to be given bail. It will be the Criminal Procedure Act that will be able to give effect to such proposals that are there. The second area as well, we have discussed in the justice cluster, the issue which also the Criminal Procedure Act will also be amended is the issue of parole. And there's a call that those who have been found to have violated in sexual offenses, either rape and others, or killed their partners or women, should not be given parole for a particular time, and they are calling for harsher sentences. And that will be given effect into those revised legislation and policies. The other issue for us is also monitoring in terms of our court system to be able to respond to that. One of the concerns I have as I arrived in the portfolio is the ability for us to be able to get children who have been violated to testify and go through court process quickly. We are seeing, for example, I had a report that I received of a child who was raped at 4 and continue to go through a trial until they were 12. It's not allowed by law. We want to ensure that if such happens, we want to ensure that our children are not experiencing secondary victimization. And therefore, some of the proposals, for example, over the weekend, when there was a march of children, Teddy Bear Foundation was suggesting that can we look at having these procedures that are involving children happening during school holidays, so that they are not affecting the children. So I will have conversation with the judiciary around that. Again, the issue of ensuring within our court system, our court becomes sensitive. We have started reviewing the procedures and guidelines I have approved after the NPA head and DPP consulted with me in terms of the different guidelines for prosecutors in courts who are dealing with gender-based violence. So there's quite a lot of work, and from Minister Mmamoloko as well, he can share. I mean, from GCPS, we're starting to monitor the number of cases recorded a week or daily, and then we compare at the end of the week. And so similarly, with cases that are before court that are dealing with gender-based violence, monitoring whether there have been successful prosecution and what are the costs, so that we don't come after and complain, but monitor in the process so that that work can be done.
Minister, this final question, I don't mean to be dramatic, but I think we are living in extraordinary times where a child, 14 years old, their body can be abused in the worst way possible, and body parts, their private parts, mutilated and removed. Do you not think, Minister, yes, you've spoken about bail and parole. You have a problem with the monitoring systems, Minister. And I think that is on record, particularly for people who are on parole and they reoffend. You clearly have a problem there. Is it not advisable that Parliament, through you, starts discussing perhaps the death penalty when it comes to those who murder people and chemical castration for those who rape. Is that not a palatable discussion at a time like this?
There are various proposals, Tony, in terms of what can be a harsher sentence. I have gone on record as the minister, I do not support death penalty. And I'll say why. We've seen incidences, as I talk about TRC, where we are reburying the remains, and we've seen people who've been killed, prosecuted, and also hanged, when actually later it was found that they did not commit such a crime. Would have seen over the weekend a suspect who was wanted and labeled that he has done a crime. Likely the police have found that he has not committed that crime and has been cleared. So you want a system that still allows, when a person has been wrongfully arrested or prosecuted, or because those things can happen, or find themselves in terms of correctiveness, we can be able to. I have heard about the story of a 14-year-old that has been mutilated. This is a fight that we must do again, all of us. I was saying even one of the other issues that we are starting to see on the rise, not only issues of children that are taken, even the albino children who are taken in terms of muti practices and all those things. Yeah. It's also the new trend where we see mothers actually commercializing their children. It's one of the issues that we must deal with. Tony, to be honest with you, GBV is not only about government. It's about all of us as a society. We've got to work together. I said to the communities, I said to NGOs, when we amend the Criminal Procedure Act, can we all look at what are harsher sentences? I would support issues of, for example, a DNA bank. I would support that so that it's easy to identify those who have raped. I would support if there is a possibility of us castrating, I would support that. I would support the issue of life sentences without parole in terms of our criminal procedures, but harsher conditions in terms of those that are involved in GBVF. But coming from our past, such as South Africa in apartheid, I find it difficult as Minister of Justice and looking at some of the things that we have to deal with to support death penalty.
Minister, I thank you very much for your time. The Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, Mmamoloko Kubayi.